Welcome to Unity Now, the podcast where we discuss unity in the face of division. Inspired by the Unity 2020 plan, we strive to unite Americans by highlighting the middle ground between the two dominant parties and promoting the individual over groups. Each episode, we will bring you exciting, well-informed guests and host nuanced conversations about politically charged subjects. Our goal is to bring an end to the ideological war threatening the collective well-being of this great country.
All right, howdy. Welcome back to the Unity Now podcast. I'm Gabe Garber, your host, and today we're joined by Iona Italia, who, aside from previous duties at Areo Magazine, is set to be taking over all of the operations here in a couple weeks, really. So we're delighted to have you with us, Iona. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. I think it's in basically 1 week, which is very terrifying. Next Monday is the official handover, and Monday is a bank holiday, so next Tuesday will be the first issue that I will be responsible for. And I would just ask everybody to please have a little patience with me during the handover period. It might get a bit bumpy. There
Great.
are a lot of behind the scenes things that have to be sorted out when you change editorship. Most of which are things that I had never had to deal with before in any way, shape, or form. So there's a little bit of a learning curve.
Absolutely. And so I'll just jump right in and say, most of our listeners, knowing our origin story, following the movement of Unity 2020 that was started by Brett Weinstein, will likely be familiar maybe with Areo Magazine, and if not with the magazine itself, they will likely be familiar with its current editor, Helen Pluckrose, who has worked with James Lindsay and Peter Boghossian with the, I guess, what was the Sokol Squared, the grievance studies. Yes. So to kind of close that loop for our listeners and viewers, the magazine in question right now, you are transitioning next week into the directing editor role, taking over for Helen Pluckrose. So they might have some familiarity, but just to kind of connect all of the dots, or as many as we can. And if there's anything else that you want to fill in for us, help us out.
Yes, also Helen and James co-wrote the book Cynical Theories, which is a critique of basically of the way in which postmodernism morphed into the modern day critical theories that activists are using or basing their thought on, activists on the social justice left, which I'll go ahead and just call the woke, if that's okay with everyone. Woketivism. It's a kind of theoretical guide to woketivism. And I believe, and I was the copy editor of that book. And I believe that they have just completed a young adult version of Cynical Theories, which was adapted by the novelist Rebecca Christiansen. Rebecca is actually, I think that it speaks to the professionalism of everybody involved, that Rebecca is actually very much a social justice leftist, but she is also a very professional writer, and she's done a fantastic job, I'm sure. I'm a big fan of Rebecca's.
Great.
So I don't want people to think we're all enemies with each other on these opposite sides of the debates.
Agreed. And I think, we've touched on it before here, when we kind of explored some of the political compass and just had some of our own crew on to kind of flesh out just where all we align, and just to kind of view the landscape of our own political leanings within our team, knowing that we're coming from different backgrounds and different perspectives. And it's important, I guess, to understand that regardless of where we're coming from, we are all kind of lumped in or wrangled in by this commitment to the liberal ideals, and that seems to be something that Areo is advocating for very strongly, very centrally to its core principles. Well, great. Yeah, as far as the young adult version, I guess that's surely becoming the model now. There's just there's plentiful variations of books that are going to be happening. I'm sure there'll be a kids version coming up soon afterwards as well, if all follows suit. Well, yeah, I guess I don't know if we can just maybe use some of this opportunity to, I guess, talk about some of your roles with the magazine, some of the maybe highlights, some of the stuff that you're aiming to continue to advocate for and push for and broadcast.
Sure. So I joined Areo in August of 2017. I actually began writing for Areo a little earlier. At the beginning of 2017, I encountered Malhar Mali on Twitter, and he commissioned a film review from me. And then in August 2000, and I wrote a few other pieces also for Areo during that time, mostly critiques of social justice ideology from very much from a leftist stance. I personally, this is me personally, not the magazine's editorial stance, but me personally, I am a very much an old-fashioned economic leftist, a lifelong labor voter, a kind of smushy, mushy, milquetoast centrist type, a hater of Jeremy Corbyn, and a fan of a strong welfare state and especially National Health Service. And I am also, I am half Indian, and I'm also a strong advocate of multicultural secularism in India, which I think is under serious threat at the moment from the Hindu nationalist movement and the ruling party, the BJP. So I wrote some pieces that were mostly critiques of the social justice left from a leftist perspective, and then in Helen and I became friends on Twitter. I was living in India at this time, and she asked me to join as Areo's copy editor. So from August 2017, I've been involved with the copy editing, and that's really been my main involvement with Areo. Helen and I are personally friends, and we've become quite close personal friends. And I also have a very wide range of points of agreement with Helen. I mostly agree with her, and I am. We haven't published anything that under Helen's regimen that I don't stand by, but I didn't actually have any direct say in the content of the magazine. I had only a veto right, which I exercise very occasionally. And I also wasn't involved in anything organizational. I was really just a staff on the magazine, and I was very much the first officer, or maybe even a kind of duty officer, and Helen was the captain of that ship. I was the Riker to Helen's Picard. And now I'm in charge, and I'm probably going to be a bit more Cisco than Picard. So people who are not expecting it should now expect to be socked on the nose. So that's a perhaps rather too obscure reference to any of your viewers and listeners who may have a life and not have spent their entire 20s rewatching Deep Space Nine multiple times. But for those of you who have, hello, you will understand. So now Helen is going to be dedicating herself to her new advocacy organization Counterweight, which, as people may know, is an organization to help ordinary people who have got into trouble at work because of um, re- because of woke requirements at work. For example, because of enforced speech or pledges or um, very illiberal mandatory diversity trainings, or because of their extramural speech, their tweets or something, which express very mild or commonsensical liberal values, or values that everyone shared until 5 minutes ago, but have now fallen foul of the have now been squashed in our kind of narrowing Overton window. And so I am taking over Areo, and I'm going to be in charge of commissioning. I'm also going to do the copy editing. I'm going to be running the magazine single-handedly for the time being, until such time as I can hopefully raise more funds and be able to employ people to help me. But I will run it on a slightly reduced publication schedule of probably 5 pieces per week, 1 feature and 4 normal pieces, and on my own. So that's the plan. Um, and yes, so what part would you like me to elaborate on?
Well, I mean, it sounds like a lot. It sounds exciting. And yeah, so I guess yeah, just first and foremost, I always like to I guess congratulate the big scary decisions when they're made, and yeah, so it sounds like you have plenty in store for you, but you also seem fully capable of manning the helm, so to speak. And yeah, I'm excited to just hear. Is there anything in particular, topics that you're looking to cover? Or are you just kind of waiting to kind of see what the culture churns up for you in any given week?
I think that the main direction that I would like to keep steering the magazine in, and I guess steer it um, in even more pronouncedly in that direction, is thoughtful, carefully thoughtful, well written um, critiques, which probably many or most of them are going to be anti-woke critiques, but they needn't be. I would like people to feel, anybody who feels that an article has misrepresented something or has not considered the issue in enough breadth, I'd like all those people to feel they have the right of reply. But I think that I want to keep the magazine um, away from sort of stridency and hyperbole and inflammatory clickbait. I really would like us to be persuasive rather than posturing or denunciatory. So I'm hoping that it will be calm, thoughtful, nuanced pieces. And my general approach as a copy editor has been to calm people's writing down. That when people are saying, those people on the other side are fucking idiots, I'm like, let's change that to, if we look at this from another perspective, we may find that X and Y. I'm not interested in escalating the culture war, but I also don't want our writers to shy away from controversial topics. I don't want them to quote unquote read the room, as they always say on Twitter. What the room thinks can be bollocks. You should be able to think independently. I would like people to be high decouplers, i.e., to take each idea one at a time on its own merits instead of getting afraid because the idea might be associated with dodgy people or might be adjacent to some something that's wrong. Um, so I would like to see a lot of clarity, but I also want really perspective. I'm not interested in people who just want to raise as much kind of who are just gleeful about crazy things going on the woke side of things because they want to score points, get eyeballs, get people all enraged and up in arms. I don't think that's helpful at all. It doesn't convince anyone who's not already on board. So that, I guess, is a slant that I would like, and I'm very happy to see people approach that from both left and right. And I also want I really want perspective to be retained. So I'm very more than happy for people to talk about things that are important or interesting that don't have a culture war slant at all. I'd like to expand our international section. So I'd like there to be a sense of wider perspective of what's happening in the world. And I would also like to expand our science and arts and culture section. My stretch goal is to have 3 days a week on politics and 2 days on one on culture, the arts, etc., and one on and scholarship and one on science. Um, I do think that there is, in a sense, a kind of culture war element to that, in that one of the things I really deplore about the uber woke stuff is the politicization of everything and the inability to value arts, culture, and science for their own sakes without sort of um, trying to bean count how many people of what skin color are involved in which thing, or trying to work out whether the ideas somehow serve some neo-colonialist and who knows what agenda, white supremacist, white whatever agenda. Um, and so I would also like to see that happening. And we have had some fantastic articles in all of those areas. So I think that those are my ideas content wise. I would also like to have, perhaps less frequently, maybe every 2 weeks or once a month, an India focused issue, because there are huge problems at the moment with free speech in India. Many Indian journalists are being silenced. Their work is being taken down. The Indian press is being um, definanced, defunded, and I would like to be able to provide a space for liberal voices from the subcontinent. And I think that's becoming increasingly important. It's the world's largest democracy. If India goes bottom up, it's going to have a big impact on everyone. And of course, it's dear to my heart personally. Um, so I guess those are my ideas, and I really want to um, avoid both generalizations about groups. I believe very firmly also in I'm a very firm disbeliever in standpoint epistemology. So I think anyone can have a valid, thoughtful, and well-informed opinion about anything, um, quite independent of their nationality, ethnicity, sex, sexuality, skin color, etc. Um, and the argument should always be looked at on its merits, again, independently of those kinds of identity characteristics of the writer. Um, and one of our big strengths that I would like to see continue is we publish a lot of um, dissident academics, um, either non-woke academics in very woke fields, or academics who simply want to present their work to a wider audience in a more lively and accessible style, not dumbed down. I don't like things in any way dumbed down, but without the kind of jargon and gobbledygook and all that migraine-inducing academies in which academic articles are usually written. That's one area. And the other area is ordinary people who have a well thought out argument to make on a particular subject that seems important or fascinating to them. And Helen has, over the course of these past few years, nurtured a lot of writers who produced their first work for Areo and have since really gone from strength to strength in their writing. So one person at the moment whom we are kind of nurturing that way is Angel Eduardo. And I just see his writing getting stronger and stronger all the time. So that's I guess that's the general direction of the magazine. And it may seem a little vague, but there is the number of people who are writing in a calm, thoughtful, eloquent way, with nuance, with perspective, and without just towing some orthodox line, are not that many, and there are not many publications catering to them. So I think it's a very, very important niche.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, again, we are very happy to have you on, and hopefully can help bring more support to this, because I mean, everything you just said, it was a lot, but it's there's so much there that is meaningful, and I think is in alignment with the movement that got us started and what we're still continuing to attempt to platform, which is these complicated explorations of ideas and thoughts. And I think having a magazine is an ideal format for taking broader or kind of more long form attempts to maintain the complexity of things, and especially when we're in kind of a scenario where so much seems to just get flattened down into one-dimensional things, or like you said, the politicization of everything, which has the side effect, including kind of overshadowing so much of what else is going on globally. Like you're talking about all of this going on in India. Obviously right now they're struggling very much with COVID, among other things. But then even looking to Hong Kong, there's so many things that our attention isn't going to, that are meaningful, very, very impactful situations that are developing. And if we can't dedicate any time to that, then, not to take the full-on nihilist approach, or just it's hard to get a sense of hopefulness when we can't even, that topic just constantly gets bumped from the agenda. So I am very excited and want to boost your platform more to hopefully be able to get that going consistently, and just present to the world more takes on things, and more, like you said, not even takes, that implies kind of more of an opinionated thing, which is, again, we're talking about more verifiable stuff, or just putting good
opinion is fine too. Opinion is fine. What I want to shy away from is arguments that are based on unverifiable anecdotes. Like I can prove things are very bad because, this is something a colleague said to me in private the other day, but I can't name who. I have many, many submissions like that, and it's very difficult to know what to make of those. So we are sending those in the direction of counterweight. So if there is legal redress that needs to be had, or some workplace help that people need as individuals, they will get it there. This is about the broader issues. And there's really two things. One is that I do want to continue highlighting how kind of bollocks, I think, social justice leftist often is. But also I want us to, as a kind of wider society, to identify shared goals and work towards shared goals, rather than just being in conflict.
Yeah. And sometimes that's drawing attention to conflict that impacts everyone universally more than is necessarily presented, or it's not a partisan issue. It's something that actually has tremendous impacts down the line for everyone. Like you're saying, the biggest democracy in the world, we should be paying more attention to that, because
Yes,
the number of people that stands to directly impact in India alone is just a small piece of the puzzle when you zoom out and recognize that, it's an operating democracy, and there's incentive to helping kind of stabilize that, or figure out ways to solve those problems.
I'm a very strong advocate of getting beyond disputes over race, over which issue affects which race the most, getting beyond kind of battles between men and women. This men's interests over here and women's interests over there. I I'm a very firm believer in that kind of saying homo sum humani nihil me alienum puto, which I'm pronouncing in a horrible way. If anybody does classics, please ignore that pronunciation. But I am a man. Nothing human is alien to me. That is what we should aim for.
Yeah, and I think is a testament to where we are right now, to even have to say something like this, where we almost kind of have to make sure to reiterate that it's taking that stance that you're describing is not, it's not coming from a place of disbelief or lack of compassion. There's sympathy, there's empathy to the extent that we can draw from that. And oftentimes it's just a difference in the approach that we're attempting to kind of flesh out. And oftentimes that has the added kind of negative effect of putting us in a corner of being painted as villains, or as ignorant, or what's the word I'm looking for? Just not caring, like indifferent.
Callous.
Yeah. And that, in my case, is far from the truth, but it's one thing that I struggle with is, how do we, again, going back to the unification idea as opposed to division, if all the focus is on how we're different and we need to, put so much stock in the differences, it's not to say that we aren't different, because that just seems to be like an obvious fact. Everybody on this earth is different. But like you're saying with the quote, anything human, nothing human is alien, that the differences are going to be there. That's just a fact of life. Similar, like suffering is part of life, but it's how we transcend that, again, going beyond, that you touched on, that I think is how we move forward, hopefully, aspirationally, if we want to attain these goals.
I think of it as at a personal level. So I don't think it's necessary for me to have this identity, to think these thoughts or anything like that. But at a personal level, I am a mixed race person. I have I grew up in Pakistan. I have lived in Pakistan, India, Sri Lanka, the US, Germany, Argentina. Now I'm living in the UK. I'm based in London now. And so when I say lived, I mean lived, not just visited. And so I'm very familiar with a quite wide range of different cultures. And I also, in my own person and family, span to very different cultures. Indian Parsi culture and Scottish. Um, and so I feel that if you are somebody who is um, mixed race and has a kind of multinational, multicultural background, that is, it's neither fault nor merit, but it's an opportunity if you want to take it. It's an opportunity to show how porous these divides are and how meaningless these divides are.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
so I'm very much an universal liberal humanist, and all three parts of that term are important to me. Um,
Great. I know I've listened to a couple of the Tea for Two podcast. Is that going to be continuing with your
yes,
stepped up
yes.
role? Is that
So, yes, so I have a podcast. It's called Two for Tea. And the podcast is, there are some full length back issues, but the podcast is now mostly paywalled. And I'm putting out the podcast to patrons of the podcast, so you can subscribe separately. It's very, very inexpensive. So if you just want to listen, you can pay $1 a month and listen to the podcast. And I'm also giving it to patrons from the $10 tier up, patrons to Areo. And the podcast has been, it began as the original idea was it would be an offshoot of Areo Magazine. And I was originally co-hosting it with Helen. And then Helen became very busy, and she also hates podcasting. Inexplicable, right? You know, podcasting is the best ever thing. But Helen actually dislikes podcasting. It's not her thing. She prefers to express herself in writing. And so I took it over and kind of made it completely my thing. And now I'm going to just run it sort of parallel with Areo Magazine, but it won't be specific to Areo. I'm going to go on talking to whoever I think is interesting to talk to and spanning a wide range of topics. And in addition, there's going to be a monthly Areo live stream where I'll be interviewing one or more of the Areo feature writers from that month. And that's going to be for Areo patrons only.
awesome?
So I am at the moment on a big fundraising drive. May I talk about that?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Apologies. Here comes the shameless self-promotion part of this podcast. So Areo's finances were in a very bad state when I haven't even taken over yet, but when I started kind of having access to the back end of things. And Helen has built a really wonderful thing here in the period with this magazine. She's attracted a lot of fantastic writers. She's nurtured a lot of writers. She's created a wonderful thing. The one thing she hasn't done is ask anybody to pay for it. And so the magazine, because she, like many creative people, Helen is absolutely allergic to asking for money.
I can relate. I can relate.
She just not only will not, she just almost cannot. And so we received an unexpected sort of lump sum grant a few years ago, which is now almost gone. And other than that, the only support we had was from our Patreon. And we only had $1,300 a month in the Patreon. Now, we pay writers $50 for ordinary pieces and $80 for the feature. And we were running we're running 10 to 15 pieces a week. So that's already over $2,000 just for paying the writers. Then I also needed some money for the copy editing. I'm not an independently wealthy person, although if anybody would like to Unfortunately, I'm partnered. I can't even be a sugar. I know I'm too old for sugar baby, a sugar mommy or something. But if anybody would like to give me money, please do. But unfortunately, I'm not independently wealthy. I had to. Um, I was working on the magazine kind of about half the time, and at about half of my normal copy editing rates, well below minimum wage rates. But I couldn't do the copy editing for free. So between the copy editing and the payment to writers, we were already way exceeding our budget. And then there are other incidental expenses for hosting, for the WordPress professional suite, for there are various other things for which which cost a little bit of money. And so a few weeks ago, I was in fact afraid that the magazine would have to fold. Wasn't clear whether I could even keep it going. Now, thanks to a lot of campaigning, we do now have a total income of 4,100 monthly. This is still a really shoestring budget for a magazine. So I'm going to be running it full time. It's going to be a more than full-time job. So I will need to draw a salary from it. I also won't, ideally, I need another copy editor. It's going to be murder. But because commissioning editing is a lot of work and copy editing is a lot of work, and all the other stuff, running the social media accounts, doing the taxes, putting the images together, all of that stuff is work, and I'm going to be doing it basically on my own. So ideally, we need much better funding than this. I would also like to pay writers more. $50 is a very paltry amount to be paying people for an article, which may take, some people are taking a week or 2 weeks to write their articles because they're carefully written, researched, thought through, etc. And even op-eds that are put out more lightly are taking people an entire day. That's not a large salary for an entire day of work. And there are a lot of fantastic writers out there who deserve to be heard, but they cannot afford to write for those sums because they can't write unless it's contributing to their income in a more significant way. And then also, we could commission some fantastic deep dive research pieces. There is so much we could do. I think really the shoestring budget minimum, if we want to be publishing every day, is more like an $8,000 or $9,000 a month level, which may seem like a lot, but bear in mind that we're paying we're paying for all our writers, plus myself, and then also expenses, and we're paying corporate taxes on all of that money. So I would really like to encourage people to support us, because for our long-term survival and health, and in order to give as high quality a magazine as we can to you, we need more money. There's no doubt about it. And I'm really happy to see that people are already responding. Please keep responding. And I have revised the Patreons. I've created some perks for people. There's going to be a live stream feed. There's going to be a podcast. In addition, there's a newsletter. In addition, I'm also offering people the opportunity to sponsor writers. And we have our first 2 sponsored writers. Someone is sponsoring me to write a monthly piece, and someone is also sponsoring a culture features editor for us, Daniel Sharp. So that would make a lot of difference. That would be money that I will give directly to the writers. So you can offer to pay, for example, $150 a month to, in conversation with me, we'll decide on who to offer this to the writer of your choice. Uh, so to kind of value and support that writer and get more of their writing into the magazine and out into the world. And I hope that I can fund the magazine this way and perhaps through some more major donors as well, possibly also through overt advertising. So not paid posts or infomercials or anything, but just buy our product, the kind of advertising that you can shut out or ignore if you want to. I'm hoping that through all of those means, I can get this funded because I think that it would be a great shame to paywall the magazine or to have it on a private Substack. I think that this is writing that deserves to reach a wide audience, and therefore I would like to try to keep it completely public. But that means that it's like busking, I'm here playing my little violin. Give me some money.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And it's exciting in one sense because we're, in the internet age and we've got the technology to try out different incentive structures. And it sounds like you're experimenting with several there, the direct sponsorship of writers, or I guess columns, or I guess kind of sponsoring
yes.
certain coverage, I guess, is a different way to look
monthly.
at it.
Yeah, monthly column by the writer.
Yeah, is a cool way to experiment and see. Hopefully, like you said, hopefully that pans out and just can implement some regular, frequent columns, frequent and consistent reporting and coverage of, like you're saying, very valuable content, very valuable exploration of what's going on, in offering broad perspectives in complicated, nuanced situations. And yeah, that I think that is one of the things that's challenging there, is that it's, you even specifically said trying to avoid the clickbaity stuff. And by doing that, you're not putting the most sexy thing out necessarily, but it's, again, that clickbait. How much of that is like the fast food of digital media, or whatever kind of media it is. Yeah. So if you're wanting to cultivate and grow a garden, tend to a garden, make sure everything's wholesome and well-rounded, it takes time and resources and energy, and yeah, hopefully we can get people to support that directly and recognize that there's a need for that. And yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm the aim is not just to make as much money as possible. Otherwise, I don't know, write to our most popular female writers and start an OnlyFans site, because people will pay a lot more to take a look at a pair of boobs than to read an article. But my aim is to try to contribute something that I can be proud of. I say I, but of course, the magazine is not me. The magazine is the writers. The magazine is the people who write for it and the people who read it. That's what makes the magazine. So it's not my baby. It's a service that I'm providing and trying to make sure is something that is enriching the discourse and not cheapening it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I'm trying to think, is there any other specifics about either the transition or just certain things that you're looking to cover, or?
I would say that I would welcome people if they think they have a thoughtful take on something, or a piece that they think will be interesting to general readership that is about art, culture, or science, then just pitch me at submissions at areomagazine.com is our email.
And it's AREO, not AERO. Yes.
AREO. Oh yes.
Yeah.
So the name of the magazine is the bane of my existence, unfortunately, and because people are always calling it or spelling it Aero, AERO. It's AREO, Areo, and it's short for Areopagitica, which is Milton's pioneering plea for free press, written
So
in 1644. So
nothing to do with aeronautics or aerodynamics.
no,
Cool.
nothing, or the chocolate bar or anything like that. I should also say that in addition to Patreon, because I know some people don't like to support Patreon, the majority of people seem to prefer Patreon as the model of support, but we do also have Subscribestar, which is a more independent platform. And I'm also putting out a newsletter on Substack and Ghost. And the Substack and Ghost accounts really don't have many perks. It's a very simple newsletter. It's just if you would like to give a small amount regularly and you're doing it to support the magazine, not because you want some specific reward, then that's another option for you. And we also have PayPal, and we have a couple of people who just prefer to give us a monthly donation on PayPal as a standing order. So that's also an option. And I also, if you don't really want to support the magazine, but you do like the kinds of work that I personally do, then please consider supporting the podcast separately. So you can do that separately from the magazine. The podcast takings, I think we have about $600 in monthly takings at the moment, and I split that between myself and Justin Ward, who's my sound engineer. And the podcast does also take quite a lot of work. So I generally interview people who've recently written a book. So I always, at the very least, read that book. Plus, usually, any critiques of the book, I can find other interviews with them, other work they've done. So it is a well-informed conversation, and I've been lucky enough to have some absolutely amazing guests.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, yeah, we are very happy to have you on and hopefully get y'all some more support.
Thank you.
Thank you
so
help
much.
to continue to do what the magazine's been doing and what you've been doing. I just trying to kind of maybe wrap it back into our kind of
Yes.
how we align.
Yes, of course.
It's just, again, like with the unifying message of it all, or at least just the acceptance of a broader reality that we're living in. And it can be uncomfortable, I guess, but I think we likely share a sense that no one's entitled. Well, yeah, I don't know. The discomfort is part of it, and there's lessons and information within that discomfort that it's helpful and healthy to be able to work through those and explore those things. You gave us a bit of, well, yeah, we have a good sense of your political leanings, and I know we talked. You're kind of out of the U.S. realm, which is completely fair. Get plenty globally going on that yeah, we know you're focusing on, but yeah, typically leaning left. So we've been trying to implement some questions, like quicker, rapid questions.
Yes, please do.
So given your position, I guess we normally just say it's, if you are left, what do you appreciate about the right? So in this case, it's just whatever your position, who your opposition, what is something that actually, that you appreciate about that about the other side, that in our current climate, we don't often start with that acknowledgement of coming together, attempting to work together to solve problems for everyone. So much of the flattening gets I think has the effect of coming across as just very divisive or splitting between two different teams or tribes or however you want to do it. But so we want to try to cultivate a little bit of that uncomfortable, awkward practice of recognizing and acknowledging the strengths or the, I guess, potentials, who knows, of the other side from you.
Well, I mean, many of my friends are thoughtful conservatives. Um, I have a lot of friends who are not leftists, so I don't have any I don't have any demonization of people on the right. Um, I would say that speaking very generally, and there are obviously exceptions, I think that leftists are often idealists, and so they want to put through policies that will improve things socially, and um, they haven't always carefully thought through and costed out those policies. So one of the problems that leftists, I think, are more apt to face than the right is is the kind of the lack of the failure to realize how far good intentions can lead one astray. And this is generally true of politics. Politicians tend to propose this and propose ideas, and they get accepted or rejected based on rhetoric. Does this sound good? Does it seem like something that goes along with the party line? Is it something your your party base that will be popular with your party base? And they very seldom ask, well, let's test this on a small group of people and see what happens. Have we really thought through what we need to give ourselves a chance to see what the unknown unknowns are, what unintentional effects it might have. And that's something that I think the left are especially prone to, although I do see it in politics in general. So I think if I were going to single out one thing, it would be that.
Gotcha. Well, seeing as that's one of the central themes for us, if you have any more things to point out, instead of just singling, feel free to expand more.
I don't know that I have anything very original to say. I mean, clearly in politics, there is always a balance to be had between change and preservation. And I think there is value in the idea of the Chesterton's fence, that if you don't know why something is there, your first impulse should not be to destroy it.
Absolutely.
And that again comes down to the unintended consequences. I also think that even though I am very much an internationalist and I'm an advocate of open borders, which I'm sure many of your viewers will not like, as I keep saying, these are my personal views, not our editorial policy at Areo. Nevertheless, I think that when leftists demonize people's affection for the local, and their feeling of patriotism and their delight in things that are traditional to the local place, whatever place that is, that's both extremely unnecessary. There's no need to racialize these things. And it's also just disregards something that's very deep rooted in human nature.
Yeah, I think it can also take the extreme of, I guess, sort of calling on individuals or calling them out as being maybe selfish for thinking too locally, too individually, and tending to their own their own plot of land, their own garden. Yeah. Whatever metaphor you want to use there. Obviously, like Jordan Peterson's "Clean Your Room" has seen its share of reiterations, and some more recently. But yeah, I think that is another dynamic there, or a different, similar dimension with the demonization of the local thought and focusing on what you can impact within your realm of, or your sphere of influence.
Yeah. I mean, I am not a fan of associating those things with race, of seeing this as a white thing or a European thing, or as European culture or Western culture, etc. Because I think that cultural things are either neutral, so your type of dance is fun and our type of dance is fun. Your cookery has these strengths and our cookery has these strengths. Or if they are really important values, they're important values for humanity. If free speech is a good value in the West, it's a good value everywhere across the globe. I think the anthropologist Neil Finn, who is in trouble at the moment, I think incredibly unjustly, because he seems to have done nothing wrong. So I'm going to give him a quick shout out here. He's at Edinburgh University, and he's been getting into trouble for his slogan, "Civilization for everyone," is a sort of catchphrase of his. And this is seen as somehow a white nationalist dog whistle, and I find that entirely the wrong way of thinking about things. This has nothing to do with race. It's to do with what are the kinds of social elements that benefit most people, that are the best for humanity. And for me, it's clear that it's a society with opinion diversity, with freedom of speech, with secular government. So there's freedom of and from religion. And I'm not an atheist, but I am a very firm secularist. A society which is multicultural in the sense that everybody is welcome, but that is not not morally relative, i.e., if something is unethical, it's unethical for anybody. If something is desirable, it's desirable for all of us. And I think that is absolutely compatible with a multiracial society. In fact, I think given the way that demographics are developing in the West, and I agree with Eric Kaufman on this, the whole idea of race will become obsolete quite soon, and bring it on as soon as possible.
Yeah, one can hope.
So I think that I guess that also, of course, I'm finding a lot of allies on the right because I disagree with a social justice ideology, which I think is very divisive, and also censorious and anti-free speech. Mostly I end up annoying those people because I don't agree with them on their core conservative values. But that doesn't at all mean that I demonize them as people. But yes, I guess those are the things that I admire from people on the right.
No, that's great. I mean, a lot of that also kind of ties into one of the other fire round, rapid fire questions that we have.
Rapid on my part. I'm not very rapid.
We'll take what we can get. Yeah. No, we appreciate it. But yeah, it's just, again, like, what's one of the things that we can do to bridge the political divide? But I think so much of what you just said contains so many pieces of the answer, or it's no one thing. It's a constellation of so many different strategies. And like I said, in that long-winded answer, it contained so many valuable insights into how we might do that. Because I think... Go ahead.
I would say... sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Please finish.
I was just going to say so many valuable insights into how we can do that. And again, just to draw on the alignment of those overarching broad goals and aspirations that I think our viewers and listeners will share with, your readership and the magazine moving forward?
I would say if there's one thing we can do, it's identify shared goals
Yeah.
and identify common ground and shared goals and work together.
Somehow easier said than done.
Of course.
Yeah. And it's, I mean, that's another thing, fully transparent. It's going to be messy, or it very well might be, but
Yes.
we have to be willing to get our hands dirty, or at least our minds, if we're exploring ideas.
I would also suggest don't create an echo chamber for yourself. Keep lines of communication open, even with people you very much disagree with. I don't mean that you need to, of course, I don't mean you need to be friends with people you despise. And I also don't mean that you need to necessarily debate and fight. But for example, to give a very tiny example, I have people who we mutually follow each other on Twitter, and I disagree with almost everything that they tweet. And I'm sure vice versa also. In fact, there are several people with whom I frequently find myself will be quote tweeting the same thing, but with opposite comments. So I'll be quote tweeting to say, God, this is such complete crap. And he will be quote tweeting to say, here, this is exactly what needs to be said. And I'm not really, I'm very seldom in the mood to get into actual argument with those people. But when I see them tweeting out something more personal about their family or something political but that I agree with, then I will offer my supportive comment, my like, etc. And I will try to just keep a sense that we are human beings and there's a wider aspect to us than just our views on culture war topics.
Yeah. I'm picturing like a city fountain, and this fountain represents that humanity, and so taking the opportunity anytime you pass to drop a coin in the fountain of the shared humanity. So taking these opportunities, even though you might disagree more often than not, but when there's something either you agree with or is just a supporting, well wish that you can offer up to, expend that a little bit of effort to do that and help maybe little by little, piece by piece, kind of just instill in everyone, if we can, that sense of shared fate, shared humanity, and because ultimately we're all heading the same direction. So zooming out enough, and it's becoming increasingly difficult to remember that or to really clasp on to that concept.
Well, it's very hard for me in the moment to ever think that I'm wrong about something. At the moment of saying it, I am 100% convinced I'm right. And might be wrong on individual things, but I'm 100% convinced I'm right in my broader views. But nevertheless, there's this uneasy part of my brain which remembers that I used to hold different views than ones I hold today. And at that time, I was also 100% convinced I was right. So I think that even though it's not comfortable or natural to feel it in the moment, you should maintain in some corner of that brain of yours the idea that you could be quite wrong about everything.
Mm-hmm.
And that therefore, and the people you're fighting with could be right. And just kind of, just allow that to guide you a bit when you feel the temptation to escalate into kind of absolute demonization and enmity and stuff.
Yeah, that reminds me. I think it was Maria Popova for Brain Pickings, or I might be crossing a few. It was on some podcast that I heard them talking about it. But one of the ideas essentially was, like if you're doing a good job of living and growing, your hope would be that you would look back at yourself and not be able to recognize, well, there's still that common thread of the self that you're living in ostensibly, but you want to be able to look back and say, look how far I've come. I've grown, and I've, my views have evolved, and yeah, hopefully it's always in the right direction. So it would make sense that you would look back and be maybe disappointed in your past self, because that means you've moved forward in, hopefully, in the right direction. But again, all of that is relative, and who knows? Exactly.
You could be going around in a big circle.
Very, very well, we could be all doing that. Well, Iona, I don't know. I guess I'm a bit at a loss. Is there anything in closing while we still have you, and that?
No, I would just say that if you are a believer in liberalism, in viewpoint diversity, in free speech, and in good quality writing, then please consider offering support, because those things are not going to stay around for free, and there are a few better ways that you could spend your money than to support a small independent publication. And what is a small amount to you, like $5 a month or $10 a month, is to us, in the aggregate, it makes a difference between life and death. It's huge.
Yeah.
So please support us if you can. That's my
as a
message.
As a matter of perspective, it's always helped me when it's, the analogy is drawn, to a cup of coffee or something that you do that's just an afterthought, but it's one of those a month that you abstain from, and it goes somewhere else. Is, as you're saying, it makes such a huge difference. So anyone listening or watching, if you feel so inclined, we absolutely encourage the support for Areo and Iona and all of the projects you're taking on.
Thank you so much.
Of course. Thank you for your time and generosity with us, and we look forward to seeing the work that comes out. And yeah, our paths, I'm sure, will hopefully continue to cross, and fighting the good fight.
Yes, thank you.
Well, I guess I should wrap up. That would be my cue. I'm a little rusty. It's been a while. So yeah, thanks everyone for tuning in. It's been another episode of Unity Now. We will be back again, I guess, shortly. Thanks.
Thank you for watching the Unity Now podcast. If you enjoyed our show, follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram by clicking the links in the description below. Bah!